Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Scarlet Duelist back again with another deck profile. And I think it's pretty good. It's a Crusadia deck profile. Um, it's, I would say, as far as the tier system, my tier system, at a level where it could really, honestly, potentially top a regional, steal some wins at a YCS, because it is kind of an underdog deck. If your opponent's not ready for it, then you could steal several wins. Even if they now know what you're playing and you go into game 2 and game 3 in a tournament, you can side deck for what they are going to probably side in for you. And still be good to go, because this deck has the ability, the way I've built it, it has the ability to become a going first or second deck rather than an OTK or bust deck. And I'll show you that once we get into the side deck, and we'll go from there. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with the Crusadia cards. You pretty much have 3 of everything. I think there's one that I do not have 3 of just because it's not always useful. But you have 3 Maximus, 3 Leonis, 3 Draco, and that's all I can fit on screen, it looks like, so we'll stop there. Just brief explanations. I know I tend to ramble, so I'll try to not do that as much. Crusadia Maximus is basically here to let you pull off the double damage effect. Remember that he only lets you do the double damage effect if you're attacking a monster, which is why we have a couple of the other things that we run. Leonis lets you do the OTK effect if you've used Maximus to do the double damage, or you've just got, Equimax, our boss monster. If you've got him at a lot of attack, you can still use Leonis to allow for piercing damage if your opponent has gone into a defensive mode monster. So yeah, these 2 really help you get off that the OTK right away. But if not, just leave them out for negates, which we'll talk about later. Next, we've got Draco. This is really nice because you use a lot of your Crusadia monsters right away for link climbing. So this lets you recycle. If you've normal summoned Maximus or Leonis and then you special summon your Draco, you can bring back your Maximus or Leonis to your hand and then special summon them. Just remember, you want to be strategic about which one you use first, because you want to be sure that that's the one that you want is the one that you tend to start with, so that you can end on it later. So just so talking about combos, you want to be strategic about which one you bring back at the time. Especially if you've already used that monster's special summon effect. You don't want to bring it back with Draco because it's dead in hand until the next turn, because they can only special summon themselves to the zone that a link monster points to once per turn. So keep that in mind. So there's those. We've got just a few more. Oh, whoa. I just about dropped them out of my lap, so I'm glad that didn't happen. Crisis averted. Next, we've got 2 Reclusia, just because you don't really want to pop much. There might be some restrictive cards, but not technically. I don't know why I said the word technically. But usually if you're using Reclusia, it's on a card that is prohibiting you from going further in your link climbing or something of that nature. So you're not usually using Reclusia to get rid of a monster. And chances are, if there's something you need to get rid of, it's prohibiting you from using monsters in the first place, because there are things that stop this deck, like Goes in Match and, what's the other floodgate? Rivalry of Warlords. So you're going to use your spell cards that are back row removal rather than Reclusia most of the time. But if you have a problem card and you can still special summon monsters, a cool combo with Reclusia is you use that. Hopefully you've searched Crusadia Power by now. If you're using this, you target your Link Crusadia monster that you've just summoned this under with Crusadia Power, and it's a free pop. Then you don't have to actually destroy anything. But because that's not always useful, that's why we kept Reclusia down to 2, because worst case scenario, he's a Crusadia name for you to use to link climb. Next, we have Arborea, which is really cool because it has that protection effect in the grave. You can banish it to protect your Crusadia monsters, and it's also a tuner, which we sometimes occasionally use to go into our FA Dawn Dragster to protect ourselves from spells and traps. So yeah, Arborea is very useful for multiple reasons. And that's it for our Crusadia main deck monsters. Next we have our Mech Knights. So I've got 3 Mech Knights in the deck because I don't want it to get clunky. We've got Blue Sky, Indigo Eclipse, and Red Moon. I've got these 2 as because, budget. Definitely the ideal Mech Knight, I believe, is having 2 copies of Purple Nightfall instead, or even maybe another copy of Blue Sky. But I'm kind of, like I said, in between budget and competitive, so I've got just what I've got here, and it works just fine. Because you can, most of the time, work out getting 2 cards in a column with Crusadias, so bringing these out is not a difficult thing to do. What's cool about Blue Sky is he searches one of these 2, and then you bring this guy out, and he helps a lot with potential OTKing, because if you put him in the right position, you can attack with your Equimax, gaining this attack boost, then quick effect change his column where he is, and then now he can attack because he's no longer restricted by Equimax. So if you can't get the OTK off with just attacking once with an Equimax, you can use Indigo Eclipse for that. And Red Moon is just another body to boost Equimax's attack if you have run out of your other. Maybe you use these for link material for some reason, which is possible. So Red Moon's just another one that you can use if maybe you don't have anything else to search or you've already got these 2 in hand. So there's our Mech Knights. Next, we've got a couple World Legacy cards. We've got World Crown. This is really nice because just like the Crusadia monsters, it special summons itself to a zone a link monster points to, and it's a free negation of a monster from the extra deck. It tributes itself off, and then you get to negate one of those monsters' effects, and it's a quick effect, which is nice. And then we have World Legacy World Lance. We have it at a 1 of and this at a 2 of because when you see them, they're great, but you don't always want to see them. Most of the time, you want to see a Kaiju or Mech Knights with a Crusadia monster so that you can get your plays going and get off the OTK. That's why we're not going to run too many of these. This is nice if you didn't get the OTK off and you need to protect a little bit. Your opponent won't see that coming. And it's more effective, by the way, when we side deck for going first, but it's still a good card to have a 1 of, and even if you're not going to use it, we have trade-in to just not pop it. Well, we're not going to pop things in our own hand, but we'll send this to the grave just for some more draw power. But yeah, these are very useful at these numbers. I've found after testing and testing and testing, most of the time, this deck wins because your opponent is not going to see this coming. Not really anyone's playing Crusadia right now, which I find surprising because the ability to free eliminate whatever your opponent brings out with a Kaiju and then OTK will never become outdated. Now, it could become outmatched in speed. It's possible that other decks are made, like FTK decks, that just straight up win on the first turn. But yeah, this deck will always be good, or at least be good for a while, in my opinion, because you have the ability to rid your opponent's board of what they have, but still have things on their board, and then just attack for game without them doing much about it. So next, we have our Kaiju engine, which is 2 Doggeron. We have 1 Godarla and 1 Thunder King. Now, if you have Gameciel, definitely run it. But it really doesn't matter, to be honest, what Kaijus you have. If you have at least 4, you're probably going to see 1 with the amount of draw power and searchability that this deck has. So you can eventually run into 1 if you didn't draw into 1 on your first turn. And it really doesn't matter which one you use. You're going to give your Equimax a significant attack boost. Or if you use... what is this? I'm drawing a blank on the card. I'm looking for it. Oh, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. If you use Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, just give them the Godarla and give yourself 1 of these 2. Easy. So Gameciel's not as important to the Kaiju engine as people make it, in my opinion. It's useful, but like I said, if you don't care what your opponent has, then give them whatever. You know what I mean? So there's our Kaiju engine. And finally, we have our last monster, Grinder Golem. It's nice because you can get an immediate link too. And then your opponent has a monster for you to attack into. And even if you didn't use Crusadia monsters, not a big deal, because you use your Link 2, bring out whatever Crusadia monster or World Legacy card you have, and then just keep climbing. What's also really cool is, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, what's really cool is Grindagolem does restrict you. If you used it, you cannot normal summon or set a monster in the same turn, but because Crusadia monsters special summon themselves, you get around that restriction. So that's what's really cool about this deck. You can use this and it doesn't restrict you all that much. Next we have our spells. We've got 3 Haytrunade, because they're either going to use their back row to retaliate to Haytrunade, or you're just going to send it back to their hand, and that's it. So 3 Haytrunade is good. We also side deck 3 Red Reboot, but because Red Reboot is such a reactive card and it waits for your opponent to do something, I like to use Haytrunade because it can be bait as well as getting rid of their traps, because they're either going to, because here's a little secret. I'm going to ramble a little bit. Sorry, I tried not to, but here we are. Solemn cards tend to destroy this deck. If you get Solemned, basically you end your turn. So that's the one downside to this deck. It's so powerful, but if it gets Solemned, you're done. What's interesting, though, is if you're a competitive player, most of the metagame that no one's running Solemns that I know of in most decks. But if you're more in the locals, regional realm like I am, you'll run into that sometimes. So you'll want to have Haytrunade, just because if they have a judgment set, they'll have to use it on this, and then you'll see from there. Most things, even in the regional local level, are not trap heavy, but you have this just in case you need it, with some other removal as well, not just Haytrunade. Just to be clear, we're not depending solely on having Haytrunade to get rid of back row, but it's a wonderful option to either bait out a negation or just straight up get rid of it. Next we have, actually I'm going to find the other removal, since that's what the topic is that we're on right now. It was a little bit out of order, I apologize for that. Next we have 1 Twin Twisters and an MST. The reason I don't have 2 Twin Twisters is just because I think that you don't always want to discard a card to get rid of spells and traps, so MST is just a 1-for-1 that kind of balances that out. Because sometimes you want to keep what's in your hand to get rid of back row. So 1 Twin Twisters is good. I think having too many would mean that you're going to be constantly discarding to get rid of, or losing cards to get rid of back row. If you think of, I hate to be this person, but kind of card economy, just think about the fact that, the cards in your hand are cards that you need to use. If 2 of your 5 cards, I guess 6 because this is a going second deck, are Twin Twisters, that's 2 cards gone out of your hand to get rid of your opponent's back row. So you just want to keep in mind, as you find ways to get rid of back row, you want to find ways that cause you to lose the least amount of cards in order to do that. That's why we use Haytrunade, because it's kind of a one and done, rather than solely depending on Twin and Twister. That's interesting. I don't remember that card. Twin Twisters. Next, we've got our draw power. We've got 1 Pot of Desires. This deck has so many 3-ofs of the cards that you really, really need that it doesn't matter if 10 get banished. The chances of you banishing all the cards you need are very slim. Next, we've got Trade In, because I believe you've got at least 6 level 8s. If you see Trade In, chances are you're also going to see a level 8 to trade it in and get hopefully something you need. Then we've got Pinpoint Landing, which is cool because it's continuous, and every time you special summon 1 monster, you get a free draw. So that's really nice. If you have this and play it, then you're going to be drawing at least 1 extra card per turn, as long as your opponent doesn't destroy it or remove it in some other way. So there's our draw power. The deck is consistent enough that we don't need too much of that. Next, we've got 2 Black Garden. The reason I picked 2 instead of 3, and you'll see me do this a lot with cards, because I find that unless it is the actual archetype cards of any deck, the power cards or the combo cards that sometimes work well with it are not always what you want to see, because the keyword there is sometimes. Black Garden is really good sometimes with Crusadias. For example, if maybe your opponent didn't summon any monsters, You can play Black Garden, and every time you summon a monster, a token will appear in attack position, and you get to choose where that is, and finally get set up with your Equimax to be able to attack into each one. And even though it lowers your attack, you're going to do enough damage that that it won't matter. You'll still win the game. So this is good for that reason, and it's good to play if maybe you can't do anything, you got a dead draw. Every time your opponent then summons a monster, their attack will be lowered and you get a token to defend yourself. So that's why Black Garden can be useful, but it's one of those cards that's useful sometimes, not always, so we don't run it at 3. Next we have 2 Crusadia Power. Now, different philosophy for running this at 2. It's really good, but you will see it because it's searchable. So 2 is fine. You don't need 3. Because this is an OTK deck, the chances are you searched it out, used it for the time that you needed to use it, and now you're going to attack for game. And that's that. Next we have Monster Reborn. It's our only recovery card because we really just don't need that much recovery. I know a lot of people use World Legacy Succession, but I think it's kind of pricey to just have another Monster Reborn in the deck because you don't really need it all that much. If you played the deck right, then you shouldn't be needing to revive a whole lot. So that's just my philosophy. Only 1 Monster Reborn. We've got 1 Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones. You'll find that we like tokens in this deck because we've got a lot of Link monsters that can just be free from them. You play this once, you get Kagari, it brings it back, and then you play this again, and that's a free Link too. So that's why we run Hornet Drones. When you see this, it's never a bad thing. Even though it's limited to 1, if you have this card, you're going to be happy to see it. Next, we have World Legacy's Memory. It is a free Mech Knight, so that's really nice. If you have cards on the field all set up, you play Memory, bring out your Mech Knight, and Equimax gets an attack boost. Finally, we have... we've got 2 more cards, actually. Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. This is just nice as a disruption to your opponent if they get their board all set up and have no way to negate spells or traps. Well, I guess just spells in this case. Then you can play this, remove whatever's on their field, and then you've got your board set up the way you want it. The field is yours. So that's really nice. Then finally, our last card is Crusadia Revival. Only 1 because, once again, it's searchable. You can search all your Crusadia spells and traps. So you don't need to run multiples of them very often. This allows your Link monsters, your Crusadia Link monsters, so aka Equimax or Equimax, however you say it. I don't even know how I've said it throughout this video, I kind of forget. But anyway, that guy, your boss monster, he can then attack all monsters on the field and he gains 500 attack. So this card's very, very good. You want to search this out more than you want to search Crusadia Power because Crusadia Power is really there just in case somebody pulls a hand trap on you. But the deck chain blocks all on its own. So that's why we don't have Called by the Grave and other things like that. If you run into a hand trap heavy deck, we've got side deck options for that. But most of the time you're going to do chain blocking. If you don't understand what that is, I can maybe explain in another video, but I'm not going to spend time on this video explaining chain blocking. Next, we've got our extra deck. So we've got 2 Crusadia Magius. This allows you to search another Crusadia monster once you summon something to the zone it points to. We've got Kagari, which just helps us go into our Link 2s. Nightmare Phoenix, more back row removal, and Reproducus. So this is just, again, a step up. If you didn't get Crusadia monsters, maybe you got Grinder Golem, you can make a Reproducus instead of one of the in-archetype Link monsters, and then you can just special summon 1 Crusadia monster to that, and then go into your Equimax or Equimax. I can't remember how I said it. I'm now second-guessing everything I've ever known. Then we've got these 3... JK4, I'm going to scoot these over and squeeze these all in together because they're all Link 2s. I'm trying to get all the Link 2s out of the way now. These are they all have their own uses, but we'll start with the Crusadia monsters. These are here basically to Link climb. Regulex searches your Crusadia spells and traps. And then we have Spatha, which is good on occasion to change a card's column. So let's say your opponent has a card on the field, you didn't get to kaiju that and put it in the column above where Equimax will be pointing. you can then target one of their monsters, move it to that zone, and then Equamax will gain that monster's attack. So Spatha is good on occasion. We've got Underclock Taker as just another link 2 that you can special summon something under, and on occasion it's useful to steal some attack and give it to another monster. And then we have Lanfarincus just as a generic link 2 that we can make really easily. And then finally we have our Equamax. We only have 2 just because if you needed more than 2, you probably already lost or you played the deck wrong, to be honest with you. Because if you make him once, you should be able to win the duel. If I'm just being honest with you. That might sound harsh, but you should be able to win the duel if you've made Equamax, or at least be able to last with some negations and make the second Equamax and then win. Next, we've got Topologic Trisbana. That's there as a power play to get rid of all back row. If maybe your opponent's just really heavy on the back row, you can make this instead of Equamax, and then special summon something to that zone, and then boom, banish all of that, and then make Equamax later. So, yeah, lots of back row. Back row. How did that even come out of my mouth? I can't stop saying it. Back row. That's so strange. Anyway, back row will not be a problem for you as long as you get at least one of these methods that we have throughout the deck out. Next, we have Topologic Bomber Dragon. Now, this you won't use super often, but it's good in a simplified game state because if you side deck for going first, make Bomber Dragon, and then you will set a card that I'll show you from the side deck. And then once you special summon that, you get to then just nuke the field, and simplified game state, you can probably win next turn. Finally, our last extra deck card is F.A. Dawn Dragster. He's there for some spell and trap negation. You can make it using Arborea as a tuner with one of your other level 4s. And that's it, guys. I will show you the side deck really fast, and that'll be the end of the video. I'm trying to keep them shorter, guys, but they just seem to keep going for 20 minutes. I'm sorry for those of you that annoys, but also, hey, you don't have to watch them, so not on me. We have an extra deck monster in the side deck, just Exciton Knight, just in case you need to nuke the board a little bit more if your opponent's really monster heavy and you know that getting rid of their monsters means that they're going to have some trouble coming back because they've exhausted all their resources. Exciton can be good. Next, we've got another World Lance, just in case you are going first. If you want to see this a little more often, you can definitely do that. We've got a Storming Mirror Force just for some non-targeting removal. We've got a Solemn Warning just for, again, some just negation. Setting just whatever traps maybe you want to throw in, or kind of what I have here for side decking, because remember, you're side decking for going first rather than for going second. Next, we have Unending Nightmare. This is nice because you can just destroy spells and traps by paying 1,000 life points once per turn if you activate it. Then, just in case too, you just experience, let's just be real, Altergeist players, those of you that are competitive. Red Reboot's in here at 3, just so you can shut that down and win anyway. We have, this is just a fun little tech I enjoy. If you really need that extra recovery, Monster Reborn. Reborn is always good to have in there. I think it's pretty underrated because you can just pick 3 monsters that you don't even care. And in Crusadia, you don't really care which one gets revived because you're going for a link material most likely if you're trying to revive something. So Monster Reborn is just like, hey, pick one of these monsters, I don't care which one, and I'm going to revive that and use it as link material. So that's nice. Next, we have some, Called by the Grave is good, but if you have a specific hand trap that's really just bugging the crap out of you, most likely Ash Blossom, you can play Lullaby of Obedience. I've got 2 of those. And what you do is pay 2,000 life points and call out that name, and they either have to give it to you or special summon it to your side of the field. So Lullaby of Obedience, really underrated card, but if you know which hand trap they have and which one is going to screw you over, or even any other card they have that's a monster, just declare that name and they either have to give it to you or special summon it to, oh, not to your field, I apologize, I said that wrong. They have to special summon it to their field. But either way, you know what I mean? Like, call out the hand trap, it's not going to do them much good. I think other than Ghost Ogre, I think Ghost Ogre is the only one that can activate on the field. It won't matter. They just put it on their side of the field or give it to you. So that's it. Next, we have Prohibition. Again, I think underrated. Call out the one you don't want them to use, and boom. They have to focus on removing this now rather than hand trapping you. So I think these are all very underrated. And you could throw these in at 2, and hand traps probably won't be a problem if you're really worried about them. But again, you chain block enough that you shouldn't. Next, we finally have our 2 Crusadia traps that we throw in. Crusadia Vanguard allows you to tribute one Crusadia monster to special summon a different one or a World Legacy monster. So this is cool because you can tribute a Crusadia that maybe you're not using if you're going first, and then bring out a World Legacy World Crown so that you can then have that extra negation. Or you can bring out Bomber Dragon, use Crawler to special summon this to that side of the field, and then nuke the field. Wait till obviously wait till your opponent exhausts some resources and then nuke the field with Bomber Dragon. Or you can special summon this and get to search World Legacy World Lance and have that defense, basically honest effect, ready to go. And that's it, guys. That's it for the Crusadia deck. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it makes sense. And I hope that you test it out, play with it. Obviously, like I said, guys, I just want to remind the competitive players out there that are already thinking, why don't you play? Insert whatever card you're thinking. It's because I'm right in between budget, competitive and casual. I just use what I have and it all works. So why not? Why invest more money into something just because it might just be the norm? You know what I mean? Don't use things just because they're what other people use. If they work for you, use them. And for those of you that are casual, you might be thinking, gosh, this is expensive. You can play the deck without buying like Bomber Dragon and Trisbana and some of these other, like the Mech Knights. You don't have to play them that way. You can play other cards that are just filler and still have a really good chance of winning. So I think this deck has something to offer everybody. It's budget friendly and well, for those that are casual, and you can make it really competitive too for those that go to tournaments more often. So thanks for watching. Like I said, I'm the Scarlet Duelist, and I'm confident calling my content pretty good. So if you liked it, like the video and subscribe. If you didn't, just tell me how I can get better, other than rambling, because I already know that I do that. See ya.